So I'd like to call this meeting to order and add one small verbal update to the agenda for the closed meeting. I will give a verbal update on a meeting that Mayor McGarvey and I had last week as follow-up to item on governance of the region. So that will be at the beginning of the closed meeting. Are there any other changes to the agenda? Can I have approval of the agenda as circulated? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the special meeting of council held on July 10th, 2023 as circulated. Could I have a motion? Councillor Finson, and a seconder. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on July 17th, 2023 as circulated. Councillor Adams, motion, and Councillor Collins, seconder, all in favor. Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matters. Consent applications number B 2023-0010-F for Macmillan and Oswald, and B 2023-0011-F for Brinovec and Kong. And zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2023-0014-F for Lalonde, and zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2023-0013-H for Jabour. Could I have a motion to move into a public meeting? Councillor Getty, and seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor? Okay. Council will now hold public meetings for proposed consent and zoning bylaw amendment applications. In accordance with the Planning Act, Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a consent or passing a zoning bylaw. Anyone wishing to receive notice of the passing of a zoning bylaw amendment and who has not submitted such a request in writing should provide your full name and address to the clerk. No one other than the prescribed persons may appeal an application under the provisions of the Planning Act. If they do not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin prior to the decision of council, then the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. The purpose of consent application numbers B 2023-0010-F for Macmillan and Oswald, and B 2023-0011-F for Brinovec and Kong is to provide deeded right-of-way access over shared portions of an existing driveway benefiting two abutting properties. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on July 25th, 2023. Notice was therefore considered provided in accordance with requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to these applications?
No correspondence has been received.
Is there anyone present in council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to these applications? If so, please move to the podium and let me know who you are. Nope. Nope. Has anyone registered to speak to these applications via electronic participation?
No one has registered to speak to these applications.
And does council have any questions? I believe Lauren is, yes, Lauren's on screen for us to give us the background. Does council have any questions? Must be a perfect report, Lauren, if they can't even ask a question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we move on. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2023-0014-F for Lalonde is to rezone the subject lands from highway commercial zone to a village residential 1 exception zone to permit a secondary dwelling unit on the property. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of that meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on July 19th, 2023. Notice was therefore considered right in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
No correspondence has been received.
Is there anyone present in person or in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this application? Again, nobody? Okay. Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation?
No one is registered to speak to this application.
Does council have any questions? I believe it's Brady that would be answering questions. There she is, looking very yellow for some reason. Does council have any questions of Brady? No. Thank you very much, Brady. Great report. And we move on. The purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application number R 2023-0013-H for Jabour is to rezone the subject lands to permit the construction of a dwelling, detached garage, and a flat roofed two-slip boathouse boat port. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of the meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was provided by posting the property, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on July 19th, 2023. Notice was therefore considered right in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
Letters of support were received from Carla Bergman, Naima Jabour, John Savio, and Rachel Savio.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to this? Yes. Could you come to the podium, push the little button so the green light turns on, and then identify yourself, please?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of council. My name is Rob Green. I'm with Tulloch Engineering, 80 Main Street West in Huntsville, P19 1W9 or P1H 1W9. You have to forgive me, my voice is a little bit off today. Basically, my clients would like to build a cottage on Lake Rosso to accommodate their large family. The proposal includes a dwelling, a garage with a sleeping cabin above it, and a boathouse. Much of the time, much time and effort has been taken to lay out a proposal that includes a modern septic system located behind the dwelling to protect the shoreline vegetation and trees around the building site, to include a graded swale network to gently absorb moving stormwater and direct it towards the lake, and design an aesthetically pleasing group of buildings that blend into the landscape using modern and natural materials. The proposal includes a few requests for relief, but when broken down individually, each request should be considered minor. The property is unique in that it includes a good-sized peninsula that is wholly encompassed by the property and gives it a shoreline that is almost 3 times longer than the lot frontage and acts as a visual buffer. This carrot-shaped property has presented some design challenges, but resulting proposal is reasonable from a design perspective and the relief is minor from a planning perspective. The building and their placement will meet my client's needs and allow them to enjoy their property. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement as a serviceable rural property and is its protection of the waterfront and resulting benefits. The proposal is consistent with the Township of Seguin's official plan, its desire for a high quality of built form, and is sensitive to lake heritage. The proposal is less than 10% coverage of the waterfront area. The proposal is consistent with protecting recreational, social, and environmental experiences. The 3-stall garage for vehicles and rural equipment storage has a visually cohesive design that includes a sleeping cabin above with a separate access and has a larger footprint on which to build, providing needed space for family and guests. Its placement is back of the lot does not exceed the allowable lot coverage. The dwelling is set back a minimum of 20 meters from the shoreline, but due to the irregular shape of the shoreline, most of the building is 25 to 30 meters back. The building area overage is less than the footprint of a sleeping cabin, 59 meters square. And most of the overage is a 3 seasons room, which is generally not included in the zoning bylaw, GFA measurements, and they aren't considered habitable space. Though 3 seasons rooms are great for enjoying the natural space, and bug-free and out of the rain. The boathouse and dock are about the same area as the existing 2-slip dock, and make use of existing stairway and patio at the water's edge. The boathouse is efficient in design, making use of the roof as a deck and using materials more efficiently for the modest protection and storage of 2 boats. The 2 internal slips within the boathouse seem to be more in line with the official plan policies relating to visual aesthetic and lake character. If we step back and look at this proposal, it shows a well thought out design that takes into account the owner's needs, use of landscape, and protection of the waterfront. Neighbors have expressed support for this project, and there is no objections from the public or town departments. Given that the proposal is consistent with the PPS and conforms with the intent of the official plan and requires only minor relief from the zoning bylaw, this proposal should be approved based on its merits. Now, seated behind me is Jacqueline Jabor, the owner of the property, and I believe she might want to add more of what I've said. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Would you like to speak, Mrs. Jabor? Go ahead. Is the little green light on there?
It is.
Okay,
I believe it is.
just identify yourself and your address for the clerk.
Absolutely. My name is Jacqueline Jabor. I am the owner of the property located at 27A Misty Morn Drive.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob. And it's a pleasure to be with you here today because I can chat about the most valued experience that we share with our family, which is our shared time on Lake Rosso. We've called this place our home away from home for 2 decades, and we have spent almost a decade looking for this special place. And when we came upon Sunset Point, we knew we had found our special paradise. We are a nuclear family of 6, plus spouses, children, grandchildren, and a set of aging elderly add-ons. My father was particularly pleased to learn many years ago that the locals enjoyed fishing off the coast of Sunset Point. And my daughter was even more particularly keen to learn that Muskoka Woods was a 2-minute boat drive in the other direction. And she became a permanent fixture there for about 11 years and part of the member leadership team. And today she is a young doctor who hopes to find her way to the Perry Sound Hospital next spring. Rosso is also a place where our son was married last year, and it's where every Thanksgiving takes place for our growing brood, and it's where birthdays are celebrated, and indeed a very special place. We love our little village of Rosso, our Friday markets, the general store, the nursing station, which we proudly supported years ago, and of course, Juliet Crossroads, if you're lucky to get a reservation there, and golfing at the Rock, where a fine starter by the name of Miguel, and I don't mean to embarrass anybody here today, but happened to mention quite proudly that his wife was the mayor of this township. I had no idea that you'd be here today. My apologies, Her Worship. I would just like to close that aspect of my little talk by saying that we are huge supporters of this community, of the local businesses, and we are very interested in seeing them continue to thrive and grow. The issue at hand, as I understand in layman's terms, and again, thank you, Rob, for handling the technical aspects of our design. The issue, as I understand at hand, is not our overall square footage, but lot coverage. And I understand that that is the key issue here. And the primary reason for our family for this is that it is our hope to create an aging in place dwelling with a main floor bedroom suite. Not only for us, but for the elders who often find themselves in our company at prominent retreats and times of celebration. So we do find that having a main floor master has been a key component. Quite frankly, we also wanted to avoid a 3-story mega cottage type of build, which we personally find aesthetically unpleasing in the natural setting that we so adore in the north part of Lake Rosso. And so we have tried to stay true to a 1.5-story design within the setbacks and thoughtfully appointing the spaces as we aspire to increase our time spent in the north over the coming years, despite our failing knees and hips and surgeries, et cetera, et cetera. So the natural terrain in our lot is already quite a challenge. And so we just feel that by creating as much living space on one level within setbacks would be a reasonable approach. I also wanted to mention to you today that we have over the course of time of designing the property, we have taken several steps to revise and to try to meet at a more reasonable place. We've removed a deck adjacent to the water's edge. We have reduced the size of the boathouse space, and we've removed the coverage over an entertainment area to the east of the property. As well, I just wanted to also mention that my husband has been on a group email chat with the members, residents, and I believe some residents on Misty Morn, and that has been a positive set of communication. In general, we've made it a priority to be mindful and respectful of our neighboring community and neighbors directly associated with us. And I have to say, we've been very pleased with and humbled by the wealth of support and encouragement that we've received from our neighbors and community. And so on behalf of the entire Jabor family, we thank you for your consideration of our request, and happy to answer any further questions.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions of either Ms. Boer or yourself? Anybody? Oh, is there anybody here who wishes to speak to this via electronics? Do you know?
No one is registered.
Okay, so does council have any questions of it? Councillor Collins?
I can hear you. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Just for clarification, you have an existing development right now, a dock. This is being developed at this present time?
No. There was one put in place many years ago when it was purchased.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that explains that.
Yeah.
And then the plan itself. You have two areas. One, I guess, is or two areas for your boats to dock. There's one area and it's got red lines going around it, and it appears to be for two slips there.
Councillor Collins, I believe that is to be removed.
Oh, is that being removed?
That's the existing dock that
That's
will
an-
be. removed.
Okay, that's being removed. And then, okay, so then the slips will be under the boathouse then.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Sorry for that confusion. Anything further?
No, thank you very much
Thank you.
for your presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Okay. So I have a motion that the public meeting held for the following matters is hereby closed and the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. Could I have a motion? Getty, Ken Adams, all in favor? Thank you. So we move to the consent application associated with the McMillan, Oswald and Brinovic and Kong property. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent applications number 2023-0010-F for McMillan and Oswald, and B 2023-0011-F for Brinovic and Kong, subject to the conditions set out in the decisions. A motion from Councillor Collins and seconded by Councillor Finson. All in favor? Great. So that is carried, and we move to shore road allowance. Council will now consider the following road allowance applications. Shore Road Allowance Application Number RAS 2020-0021-F for Trinidad, sorry if I mispronounced, on Osler Lake. Shore Road Allowance Application Number RAS 2023-0003-H for Coulter on Lake Rosso. And Shore Road Allowance Application and lands previously expropriated number RAC 2023-0001-F for Whitfield Development Corporation on Osler Lake. Have any written objections been received related to these applications?
No written objections have been received.
Is there anyone present in person in the council chambers who wishes to speak to these applications? Nope, thank you. Has anyone registered to speak via electronic?
No one is registered to speak.
So we move on. I have a motion that bylaw number 2023-073, being a bylaw to close, stop up and sell a portion of the original shore road allowance, application number RAS 2020-0021-F for Trinidad is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion? Councillor Collins and Councillor Vincent. Do we have, Lauren, do you want to tell us anything specific about this one?
Thank you, Worship. The owners at 10 Miles Way are just looking to purchase the shore road allowance abutting their property on Osler Lake. I believe this one is quite straightforward. However, I'm here if council has any questions.
Any questions for Lauren? Nope. All in favor? Thank you. And that is carried. Okay. Two for Coulter. The motion that bylaw number 2023-078, being a bylaw to close, stop up and sell a portion of the original shore road allowance, application number RAS 2023-0003-H for Coulter, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. All in favor, motion, Councillor Adams. And seconded, Councillor Getty. Lauren, anything to report on this one?
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an application by the owners located at 116 Maplehurst. And their property is on Lake Rosso. This is just an application to purchase the flooded lands as the entire shore road allowance was closed and stopped up previously in 1999. As the subject lands are also on a plan of subdivision, a deeming bylaw is also required in order to merge the requested portion of shore road allowance with the owner's property. Again, I'm here if council has any questions.
Any questions for Lauren? Nope. All in favor? Thank you. And then this, I believe, is the deeming associated with it. I have a motion that bylaw number 2023-079, being a bylaw to deem lot 5 of Plan 183 pursuant to section 50 bracket 4 of the Planning Act not to be on a plan of subdivision, property roll number 4903-010-002-19800, file number D 2023-0005-H for Coulter, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion? Councillor Adams and seconded by Greg Getty. All in favor of the deeming? Thank you. So that is carried. And this is the Whitfield. And I have a motion that bylaw number 2023-081, being a bylaw to close, stop up and sell a portion of the original road allowance, application number RAC 2023-0001-F for Whitfield Development Corporation is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion? Collins and Councillor Finson. Lauren, do you want to explain this one for us?
Thank you, Your Worship. So the applicant at 312 Oser Park Drive, Whitfield Development Corporation, has made application to purchase the lands abutting their property, which includes previously expropriated lands adjacent to Oser Park Drive and a small portion of shore road allowance. If you may recall, the Director of Public Works previously brought forward to council an information report in February, and council had directed that staff proceed with the applicant's request to purchase the surplus lands. Fast forward to today, the survey has now been registered and the file is now ready to move forward. The township solicitor has also prepared an agreement purchase and sale, which is attached to the proposed bylaw. Both myself and Director Tom McLeod are available for any questions if you have any.
Thank you. It's nice to see something being done with that property. Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Adams.
I noticed the fire department have their dry hydrant there. Is that good? I think it's on the corner of that shore road allowance. Is that,
Director McLeod, do you know anything about the fire department?
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. Just want to give Lauren a thank you for taking over this. It kind of helps along. But yes, Sean and I, the fire chief, we did go out and have a look, made sure it wasn't obstructed, and there is a right of way clear to that hydrant. So no, it's not obstructed at all. So that's covered on that front.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a question?
It's a standpipe, right?
You can't hear you.
just a dry pipe that draws out of the lake?
Yeah, it's a standpipe, correct? That they draft, that they could fill their tankers with water.
Correct, a dry hydrant. Yes,
Yep,
correct.
yep. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All in favor? Thank you, and that is carried. Okay, we have item 7 on the agenda is strategic planning and budget discussions, and we have a representative from the Finance Committee here. We also have 2 delegations, each representing 10 minutes. I'm wondering if we should move the delegations forward so we can put more time onto the strategic planning discussion that isn't limited. I apologize, Craig, if you don't mind. So we move to item 8 on the agenda, and Mr. Gamage is here with a presentation. Okay.
Madam Mayor and members of council, I am Douglas Allen Ditchburn Gamage, great-grandson of pioneers who settled in Rosso. I have been a seasonal resident since 1954 and a permanent resident since 2019 at 1 Clifford Street. I own 2 residential properties in the village, but do not own private access to the lake. Present bylaws deny me a reasonable, practical boating experience from Rosso Bay, Water Street, as any homeowner in the village should have. Conditions in place are too restrictive for residents on a seasonal basis and gives rise to little or no use and enjoyment. Many agree with me. I have submitted a brief and by no means comprehensive petition from 11 residents requesting attention to the issues. There are at least 6 more who have not signed. It came about quickly and by word of mouth. We wish to shed light on the omission of a pertinent detail in the Seguin official plan. This has caused a lack of focus on what should be priority and has proven to engender incorrect impressions and poor guidance. A covenant in the Rosso official plan dedicating the use and enjoyment of Rosso Bay Water Street to the residents of the village of Rosso was dropped in the 2007 official plan. Preservation of the intent was implicit in the amalgamation. Instead, its omission has created a situation where its intent is occluded. The original Helmsley-Rosso official plan entrenched this covenant in the shore road allowance for the use of the residents of the village to be used in their best ways as the era allows. That speaks for residents whether on the lakeshore of Rosso Bay or further inland. The term resident, I think, was to indicate homeowners, as we did see granting of boathouses and docks to those who owned their own homes. There was no expressed inclusion or exclusion of commercial aspects, although some use existed. The shore road allowance, to all intents and purposes in Rosso Bay, still belongs to the residents. That right should be respected, as promised in the amalgamation agreement that Rosso would not lose anything. This does not imply that the residents would not condone any other use. It would be appropriate to have a variety of users. However, our right to be considered at the top of the list has been glossed over. This is our inherited right, and to have our needs met first is an important issue in my address. The omission of this recorded covenant in 2007 was thought to be adequately replaced by shore bylaws. But the omission has contributed to a reduction of rights and the pulling of council focus away from the residents and onto such things as licensed commercial use complaints, concern for water access property owners, complaints of insufficient space for boaters outside of the village, and so forth. Examples of the skewed focus can be found in numerous studies, public consultations, reports to council, etc. One set of notes held that time should be allowed to be sure no one is forgotten when the most important users are not receiving the attention they deserve. Time is of the essence. In David Kahn's tenure, at one point in his opinion, Water Street should be chopped up and sold off. He was inundated with complaints from the villagers and conservationists. He stepped back, researched, and made an about face and said, "You are right, there is resident privilege and heritage, and it should continue." But still, he failed to correct the reason why it escaped him at first, and by so doing, left the same pit open for future councils to unwittingly jump over. We are not saying only Seguin councils are remiss. This resident privilege was abused by Rosso Council in the selling off of portions of Water Street. What they did, in my opinion, was wrong and should have not stood the test of time. I think there may be remedies to some of that today. If residential owners asked, they should be granted a permit to display on their craft that says they are entitled to remain moored in assigned areas for as long as they wish. We have the position of first in place, not commercial markets or their patrons, nor water-only access owners who are already in the water and have places to leave their vessels. They are free to come and go to public docks. More space for other needs would be available if residents could develop their own area. Council and staff need to see the printed repetition of this covenant alongside the bylaws to enhance future council guidance. I can appreciate some staff are recent arrivals, and Lord knows there are a lot of bylaws, reviews, public consultations, interviews, reports to council, etc., to review to understand the history. I understand many Rosso records have disappeared. What is available may not go back far enough. I worked 43 years in a public service industry, and I understand your responsibility of due diligence. However, I am under the impression there have been land surveys, ecological reports, public meetings, staff reports, etc., but for 20 years, never a plan of action. The reality presenting itself today is the same reality as existed in 2001, when Marshall Macklin Monahan made its review and report to Rosso. They acknowledged the covenant belonging to the residents, and they finished off the first paragraph in their report saying, "Enough studies, start doing something." They probably saw the same avoidance of action prior to their report as we are seeing 20 years hence. Members of council, you do not need more studies. You are covered. You have an archive full of material. You need a plan of action and to start now. The issues are known. There are solutions. Please don't massage the situation and hand it over to the next council for another 3 years, keeping the ball bouncing, as I have been told by staff will likely be the case. Please allow us to start now. You need to organize control of the boathouse situation. You need to smooth out the way in which development will evolve. You need to bring better use and enjoyment and water access of the whole shoreline to the village residents and allow non-shoreline owners a place in the harbor. I have made suggestions how this might be accomplished under one umbrella and would love to discuss this sometime. There is shoreline available where access is easy. There could be several areas. The situation is not different from 20 years ago and is not going to be different with another study. What do you hope to find? What could someone else say, and why further delay, frustration, and expenditure? In closing, my group petitioning for action is very flexible. Even if future planning brings a need for different configurations, we are willing to accept change. Allow us to develop a permanent or temporary access to an exclusive use area and issue us permits now to use what is in place in the meantime. Allow us to put at least floating wharves in somewhere. The excuse of needing more study is well worn. The excuse of needing funding is obsolete. There are solutions available now. We asked to keep an open dialogue between planning and my group. Is there any way of achieving that? We are desperate for dialogue and action. Thanks for listening. Please return that covenant to the official plan, and please keep in mind the residents come first as it is their water street. Please issue temporary permits and allow flexible development for the use and enjoyment needed now. Please, no more delays. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doug, Mr. Gamage. So we will take it under advisement. It is certainly part of our strategic planning discussion to have waterfront strategy for all of our waterfronts. So it will be discussed. We need to work with our solicitor on the status of those covenants. So thank you for your presentation. We'll take it seriously. It is the responsibility of this council to ensure that the public has access to all of our waterfronts. So that's the beginning of our waterfront strategy, is that our waterfronts are for everyone. So we will take your presentation. You have a full copy of it that'll be in the minutes. So thank you very much for all the time you've put into it. No, you're always welcome to attend council meetings, but staff and council, rarely. There will be public consultation on the strategic plan when it is ready. You can input now on letsconnectseguin.ca to the strategic planning process. It was put up on Friday, I believe. So by all means, comment there, but did that go in through letsconnectseguin.ca? That's how it should go. Okay, but I encourage you to input it right to the strategic planning portion of the website so it gets included there. And all of your friends and neighbors should feel free to comment there as well. Okay, thank you very much. And we move on to our water quality students. You have a very comprehensive presentation, I see, in our agenda package. I think so. Are they sharing? Yeah, okay. So don't forget to push the little button on the microphone so that the people on screen can hear you as well as the people here. Your ability to connect is a whole lot better than those of us that are dinosaurs.
Okay. We're good there. Hello, everyone. I'm Sarah. This is Reese. We're the water quality program. Thank you for allowing us to share our program and why it's so important to the natural place to be.
So I'm going into my 5th year studying environmental sustainability and concurrent education. And this is my 2nd season with Seguin Township, and I'm very happy to be back.
This is my 1st year working with Seguin Township. I'm loving the position so far and being a part of spreading the lake's health and working outdoors in an on-hands environment is a very rewarding job.
So Seguin Township's water quality program was started in 2008 with the purpose of monitoring the ecological health of our lakes. This program works collaboratively with the Lake Partner Program and other associations as we seek to understand and identify health trends of a rotation of approximately 120 lakes within our area.
What are we testing for and why? Each year, the water quality team performs multiple types of testing, including phosphorus concentrations, dissolved organic carbon, calcium, chloride, sulfates, dissolved oxygen, benthic monitoring, temperature profiles, and Secchi depth.
So phosphorus is a naturally occurring element that is essential to all forms of life. High phosphorus levels can be harmful, and it may cause an overgrowth of algae, limiting light penetration to deeper areas and preventing growth of other important species in the ecosystem. And an overabundance of phosphorus may be due to fertilizers, soaps, cleaning products, sewage, stormwater, and erosion. Dissolved organic carbon, or DOC, are organic molecules in lakes that come from decay, and many aquatic organisms rely on it as a food source.
Calcium is a nutrient that's required by all life forms. Many aquatic species, such as zooplankton, are at risk due to declining levels of calcium. Acid rain, forest harvesting, and climate change are all contributing factors to a decline in calcium. Chloride can be naturally found in fresh water in very small quantities, but as chloride levels increase, it can be harmful and are due to factors such as road salt and sewage contamination. Sulfates can also be very harmful to lakes when in high concentrations, and because they are toxic to most living things and include sources from sewage runoff and acid rain as well.
So our spring phosphorus testing ran from May 8th until June 1st this year. And in that time frame, we were able to test on 51 lakes, making that the highest record of lakes tested so far since this program started running. And we calculated a total of 91 kilometers paddled during that time.
Coordinates on each lake are predetermined by Hutchinson Environmental for phosphorus testing locations. It's often a mid to deep spot in the lake and is to be returned to every season for testing. After paddling to our destination, data is collected for the Secchi depth using our Secchi disc right here, lake depth, lake and air temperatures, weather conditions, lake color, and any other observations we may have. A weighted bottle is then dropped to the Secchi depth and pulled up to the surface as it fills with water using our contraption here. It's then pulled to the surface and it's filled with water and poured into some test tubes and filtered and then sent off to our labs.
That's our filtering system in our test tubes. Okay. So with the help of a new mapping system created by our GIS mapping team, we were able to become more efficient at mapping out our routes and recording our data.
You can see here, we do have an interactive map. We're able to upload our data right in the field, which has been a game changer this season, which should show there. We're able to enter all of the data, including our, so here for Maple Lake, you can see we entered our lake depth, which is 15.2 meters. Normally we would have to write down on a piece of paper and then spend time in the office afterwards entering that data. But luckily we've been able to enter it in the field, which has saved us lots of time.
And with the new mapping system, we can contact and lake access information can be saved to easily contact property owners for water access, making further testing years much more efficient. And another helpful tool is adding pictures to exact spots on the map to show any key features of difficult access points for future students.
Our map here was taken from the app that we're currently using. Our green spots here are all of the lakes that we have successfully done phosphorus testing. And some red dots there were we weren't able to complete 3 lakes on the list this year just due to weather and access issues. We work with Hutchinson Environmental to determine what lakes we'll test and the testing timeframe for the season. We work with Dorset and ALS labs and send our samples and data to their teams to be analyzed. This year, we sent 102 samples to Dorset labs in our test tubes and 51 bottles to ALS labs for our dissolved organic carbon.
So another component of our program is the benthic monitoring, which we partnered with Georgian Bay Biosphere in 2021 to conduct benthic invertebrate monitoring on lakes within our township. So benthic monitoring is a process of collecting, counting, and identifying aquatic invertebrates, and some of those include insects, worms, crustaceans, and mollusks within the lake's floor.
Results of our testing are then used to build historical records to determine and understand trends in overall health of the lakes and the ecosystems within them. The same locations are then surveyed over multiple years to compare results, and Georgian Bay Biosphere then publishes these results, and they can be found here on the township website. If you ever have time, there's a really great video showing what we do, and results from previous years can be found at the bottom here.
So this year and for the past 4 years with Georgian Bay, we have done benthic monitoring on 10 lakes within Seguin. So we've done Horseshoe Lake, Lake Joseph, Lake Rosso, Little Whitefish, Otter Lake, Little Otter, Rankin, Isabella, Sugar, and Manitowaba.
Benthic invertebrates are collected using the kick and sweep method with the use of a D-net, which is a very fine mesh net. The sampler then disturbs the bottom of the lake bed from the depth of 1 meter to the shoreline in 3 different transects within the sampling area. The disturbed material is then collected in the D-net with a sweeping motion and collected in a bucket. After about 10 minutes or until our team estimates there to be more than 100 macroinvertebrates in the bucket, we then bring the sample back to be processed.
So processing consists of taking a ladle-sized scoop from the sample bucket and placing it in a basin. Then all of the invertebrates are to be found and counted. Once you feel like they have been counted in your bucket, you're to pass it to your coworker, who's then going to do a second review to make sure that all of the bugs have been identified. And there are roughly 30 orders of invertebrates that we count. Some are more common invertebrates, which include midges, scuds, and sow bugs, which the scud is in the middle of the picture there. They're easier to identify due to their size and speed. And key environmental indicators include mayflies, caddisflies, damselflies, and fish flies, which some are also in this picture. Having these particular species within a lake can indicate good lake health and lower levels of pollution. And some of the other pictures include the flatworm, crayfish, and our dragonflies.
So our August testing consists of measuring dissolved oxygen levels in the lakes. That's done by taking concentrations at every meter of the lake using a DO probe. A water sample is then taken if the DO concentrations are under a certain threshold. Lakes are tested every year on a rotating list, weather and accessibility dependent.
And we will be starting our August testing as of Monday. We're getting our lake list this week to see which lakes we'll be returning to. And then in between our fieldwork seasons, since we have some downtime, we spend lots of time in the office inputting data into our map, spreading awareness about environmental stewardship, continuing to contact property owners to gain lake access permission. And we also run the Seguin Township booth at the Rosso markets on Fridays.
And that's everything. Thank you guys for listening. We're happy to answer any questions that you
Well,
may have.
first of all, thank you for doing a very important job that not very many people would enjoy as much as you do. So our water and the quality of it is probably our biggest asset. So you are important parts of the Seguin team. Does anybody have any questions for them?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What does crayfish in your lake indicate?
That's more of a question. The Lake Partnership Program will be.
No, you did mention something about the different types of vertebrae.
Yep.
So does that say your lake is healthy? Is it not healthy?
So,
You go.
yeah.
Because I just see
Um,
the crayfish
so-
on my shoreline.
Crayfish are common in most lakes within the floor bed. So a lot of the orders that we calculate, there's a ton of different ones that are common in lots of lakes, like your crayfish, your scuds, and that sort of thing. Once you start getting into the different types of flies, so the caddis flies and mayflies, fish flies, those are a lot less common. So if they're able to withstand pollution levels, it's an indicator.
Yeah, like I would think that if there's a crayfish in your water, in your lake system, it's a pretty healthy lake.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This
And
is what I would,
high amounts of benthic invertebrates are a good
Yes.
indicator of lake health.
well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Counselor Finson.
Do you use volunteers in your program? Ever?
I
I'm
know.
available, just let.
Yes.
I do the paddling, I like the bugs, so just saying, do you use volunteers in your
I
program?
know we have in previous years. We had some during our time with Georgian Bay Biosphere doing benthic, but
Mhm.
other than that, we didn't have many in our phosphorus testing, but I know that it is a possibility.
If you're ever looking.
Yeah.
Yes, there's
Thank
a
you
lot
very
of
much for what you do.
no problem.
Counselor Bazinski, you have your hand up. He's on screen.
Yes, thank you. Just to Councillor Collins' point, crayfish, an abundance of crayfish is a good indicator that there's enough calcium in your lake, because crayfish and other mollusks like freshwater clams use the calcium to build their shells. And to give you an example, I've noticed since I was a kid on Otter Lake, where there were absolutely hordes of crayfish. There are a lot less now, which is an indication that that the lake isn't getting as much calcium. And I think in the State of the Bay report that just came out, they're identifying that as an issue too. So if you have lots of crayfish, Ted, it's a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for what you do, and enjoy August.
We look forward to getting back out on the water.
Yes.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation and your studies. You should patent your or your bottle, yeah, because I've done some of the water testing, and the water bottle that we used on Lake Joe wasn't nearly as sophisticated with a lid that pops off automatically. Thanks a lot. Okay, so now we're going to move into item 7 on the agenda, which is the strategic planning and budget discussions. Craig Reith is here as representing the Finance Committee that has put a lot of time into this. And just to kind of coach people, Craig's going to present, then we're going to go around council to hear your priorities for the next year, which will shape and begin staff planning on the budget. So over to you, Craig. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your patience as we let the delegations go first, but I knew that this discussion should take longer.
You're welcome. So thank you, Your Worship and councillors, for allowing the Finance Committee to share our recommendations to the 2024 budget setting targets. Also, thank you to Jason for his time attending all of our Finance Committee meetings and for his input. Some of our comments reflect short-term issues, but in general, our comments reflect the big picture and concerns regarding long-term issues that we feel need to be addressed starting now, as opposed to letting future councils deal with them when they become even bigger issues. With that in mind, we have the following comments and recommendations. Number one, the Finance Committee recommends that council consider a budget increase composed of two components or two buckets, if you will. One, a budget increase in the range of 3 to 4%, and that reflects current CPI to the extent to cover the township's existing operating expenses. But if CPI continues to decrease through this year, as you've probably noticed, the range should also be reduced accordingly for budget purposes, final budget purposes. In any event, we believe council should strive to keep tax increases to a minimum. The second bucket would be a separate levy of 1% to be deposited into a separate restricted use account to be used only to build up a reserve that is required to fund the looming infrastructure deficit expected over the next 30 years, as outlined in the asset management plan. And you'll probably notice in the asset management plan, it recommends funding of between 1.5% to 2.3% per year to meet that looming deficit, depending over what time period the funding occurs. And I'll deal with the discrepancy between our 1% bucket and the 1.5% minimum in the asset management plan in a minute. Instead of waiting to fund this infrastructure deficit in, say, 5 or 10 years, such funding is necessary to begin now in order to not put 100% of the burden on future residents and businesses. Our second recommendation is that any operating surplus that may be realized in 2023 should be applied to the infrastructure deficit fund that I just mentioned in order to make up the difference between that 1% that we're recommending and the 1.5% minimum that's in the asset management plan. Our third recommendation is that council should direct staff to propose additional non-tax revenues from implementation as soon as possible in order to balance the budget and reduce the tax rate increase that would otherwise be required. Examples of such possible sources of new revenues include: 1, income that could be generated by updating and implementing changes to the investment policy that staff is currently reviewing. 2, expanding and diversifying the tax base, which I'll get to further on in this presentation. And 3, increased development charges on new construction, where such construction will significantly damage roads, which otherwise might be repaired at a cost to all taxpayers. And I'm thinking specifically of the damage to Stanley House Road that was caused by one significant project. And I don't believe there's any extra development charges for that. The fourth comment or recommendation we have is that council needs to ensure that the 2024 budget is prepared, taking into account the strategic plan initiatives and those related costs. The budget and the plan cannot be considered in isolation. The fifth recommendation we have is that the asset management plan needs to be implemented as soon as possible. It needs to be actively managed with regular timely monitoring and reporting requirements. There are material implications for roads and waste management, and in turn, urgent requirements for new alternate sources of revenue. And our last comment, thank you for your patience, is in line with the need for alternate sources of revenue noted above. The township needs to diversify its existing tax base, which is currently funded about 98% by residential ratepayers and only 2% or so by commercial and industrial sources. The township needs to invest in assets that support economic development that will result in expanding the commercial/industrial tax base. And a good example of that, as you know, is the expansion of the airport industrial base. There, by doing this diversification, you'll reduce the burden on individual ratepayers going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just can a copy of your presentation be given to the clerk? That would be very helpful. But thank you very much. There's some innovation. There's some caution in your recommendation, and we will take it seriously. Does anybody have any question? Craig is here representing his entire team. So perhaps you have questions for the team. Councillor Collins?
If council as well could have a copy of what
It'll be in the, it'll come in your minutes.
Okay.
Anybody else got, I see a question from Councillor Bazinski on screen.
Yes, thank you very much. That's an excellent report, and I would echo a lot of the comments. I'm very interested to know if the Finance Committee has done any projections in terms of costs for replacement of infrastructure, if they've had any general costing and what it might cost over the short term and the long term. I know we're going to have a roads plan and we're going to have a waste management plan, but I assume that that you've come to this conclusion that we have an infrastructure deficit based on some financials.
Yes, Council, we are relying 100% on the asset management plan report that was prepared, I believe, in June of 2022. And in there, they identified a deficit of up to 170 million, I think. So we're reliant on that and staff and Jason Inwood's comments for those projections. We don't have our own projections.
Yeah, and I'll ask Jason to reply a little bit because we have that asset management plan is at our fingertips, but your recommendation number 5, that we use it a little bit better than we have in the past to manage, update it regularly is critical to going forward. But Jason, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Thank you, Worship. I think Mr. Reith spoke quite elegantly to the fact that the financial projections for capital replacement are outlined in our asset management plan, and he's accurate in the plan suggests a worst case scenario over the 30-year horizon of $171 million funding gap. That has been a priority that the Finance Committee has been laser focused on and working towards providing recommendations and advice and guidance on how to start to bridge that gap. But all financial projections were done, I believe it was through Hempson Consulting, in a report presented to council and the community in June of 2022.
And I believe it's on our website, seguin.ca. Any other questions for Mr. Reith? So our process now is to hear from each councillor, their priorities. You're welcome to stay, as is the public. So Ward 1, over to you.
I think I'd like to see the addition of the arena. The addition to the arena is my top priority, really. It's needed bad. Yep.
Okay. Ward 2 is Mario.
Thank you. Well, I would tend to agree that, the reason people pay their taxes is to have municipal services. So predominantly that means roads and waste management. And if the roads and waste management are in good condition, then people are happy. Our tax increases have been certainly for the last year have been substantial, and even in previous years have been high. And to be quite honest, it's not staff's fault, but there's weather and so on, but there's a lot of new permanent population. There's a lot of extreme weather events. So what I would like to see, and I'm hopeful it'll come out soon in the waste management plan and the roads plan, will be how we're going to tackle this. Because to be honest, right now, I think we're in a reactionary position as opposed to being proactive. And that's because there is a perfect storm going on right now with increased population and weather. But there are significant repairs to the transfers needed. There's those roll-off garbage containers. Some of them are actually in a dangerous situation because of age. Roads are in, I've been getting a lot of complaints, and certainly I did submit one that hasn't been acted on yet. So I think we really need to focus on the infrastructure, and it will cost us a lot of money. There's no question. So we need to start preparing for it right away. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Getty, Ward 3.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that kind of echoing on the Finance Committee as well as a little bit about what Mario had said, I think the roads and waste management studies are going to dictate where we need to look at from an infrastructure process as the budget is developed. But the other one item, I've mentioned this to Jason, and I've had some conversation. I'd like to, for consideration of implementing an administrative penalty system. I had some conversation with Rory when Rory made his presentation earlier this year. There was hopes that we would be able to implement it this year. The reality is with demands on staff and budget restraints that won't happen this year, but we are in a position that we may be able to move forward with it next year. If that system's in place, that system runs about $15,000, $10,000 implemented and about $5,000 a year to operate. Once that system is in place, that then allows us to look at putting in an automated speed enforcement program into our 4 homestead communities. The World Health Organization has identified speed as the #1 risk factor on the roads. And the City of Toronto has just finished their 3-year analysis of the implementing it in the City of Toronto. And they've reduced speed in those areas by up to 87%. They also identify that for every 1 kilometer per hour increase in speed, you increase the 4 to 5% chance of fatality. So with our school zone here in Humphrey, as well as the volume of people that are going through the other 3 homestead communities, it is a program that would be an upfront cost, but would be revenue neutral when the system is implemented. As well, we can then look at it as a council of expanding it to possibly for part of our waste management program for the illegal dumping that we have going on at a number of the sites. And I anticipate that we'd probably be, to get started next year, would be in the range of $100,000. But I would think that those monies for the cameras and equipment, but that money would be recovered, I would suggest, very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Fellner is absent. So we go to Counselor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have, geez, when I listened to Counselor Brzezinski and Counselor Getty, they kind of like right in where I'm looking to improve, and that's in waste management. I think all the transfer stations and the landfill site need workable cameras. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. And that goes or relates to our life expectancy of our landfill site. I think it's 17 years now. And I'm thinking that with all the illegal dumping that's going on at Brooks Road and Stanley House and the airport, all these transfer stations, it's going to decrease to maybe 15 years because we're taking everybody else's garbage. That, and I'd like to see the relocation of the Rosso Fire Hall. I'd like to see that out on 141 rather than right in downtown Rosso, because every time there's something going on in that community, the fire hall's right there, and I think it'd be well served to be in another location, and then use that building for maybe maintenance, roads or whatever. But get it out on some of our land out 141.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Vincent.
I very much agree with everybody with waste management and roads. So everybody's mentioned that. I would like to see the renovations done to the Rosso Community Hall, including the relocation of the fire hall. to make that plan work a considerable amount better. That would be number one on my list. I also really would like to bring forward daycare and transportation, just as something we need to do, we need to focus on, and we need to get better at. We don't have enough of them. And I know I've tried this once or twice, but I think now is the time is right now to maybe bring that in. And those are the things I'd like to see, other than all the others you mentioned are fabulous. So thank you.
Thank you. As mayor, I will weigh in and say, I think all of the projects are great. I would also like to see some capital investment in doing the pieces that we need to put in place to get the MZO moving. We're going to need to consult on wastewater. All of those, they will be short-term investments that'll be completely recouped through development fees, but we need to have them as budget line items now so we can get moving. On wastewater, a secondary roads plan for the MZO lands, because I think a lot of our public think that these 2,600 houses are just going to materialize in the next few months. And really, it's a 15-year plan. So we've got to get the pieces, and we've got to invest in the pieces now to do it right and to stay environment first. As we do that. And that's going to take some investment this year. Community hall, I think, is a priority. And I believe that we will have the tools in place for the roads and waste management when we get these two studies early in the autumn. So, I don't know, someone online has their microphone on. We hear bits and pieces in the background. Councillor Brzezinski, you have a question.
It's more a comment, Your Worship, and that is that I think, yes, sooner rather than later, we need to take a serious look at the MZO and try and figure out what will be needed to attract the investment, but also what it's going to cost. Because, you know, with the consultants, they said waste management couldn't be captured under development charges. So that would be a huge cost. So I'd like to suggest that maybe council could be brought up a little more to speed through technical experts, either on staff or otherwise, just as to, you know, what could be expected in terms of costs, because the, you know, costs could be pretty substantial. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do we want to hear from you now? Your turn.
Thank you, Worship, members of council. I would perhaps just quickly like to invite Michelle to join us and maybe just talk a little bit about some of the current financial pressures that we're facing with inflation and et cetera, because while we've heard about a number of the initiatives, one of the key objectives we would like to work towards is delivering a budget that meets your expectations, not just from an initiatives perspective, but also from a tax rate perspective. So perhaps Michelle can share some insights as to what's happening in the world today, and then get some further feedback from council.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. So one of the first things is CPI. CPI sitting at 2.8 for Canada, 2.6 for Ontario. And this is from July 2023, which is good news for us. A year ago, it was sitting at 7.5. So that's always good news. Some information that council should be aware of right now: a 1% tax rate increase generates approximately $142,591 in tax revenue. The current real growth of taxation, based on the information provided to us by MPAC, that revenue would amount to approximately $43,000 next year. We have not had a definitive word from MPAC on the reassessment. As you'll recall, we're still running on the 2016 reassessment. We have not had definitive information yet from MPAC as to whether that's going to be reassessed in 2024. A few of the other pressures that we're looking at: insurance. Insurance has been a huge issue for municipalities in Ontario for the last few years, mainly as a result of the joint and several liability issue. We're looking at right now approximately a 7 to 10% increase in premiums. Canada pension enhancements will be continuing next year with the introduction of a second earnings ceiling. That will cost the municipality approximately $40,000 just on our existing workforce. External levies, normally we would like to see those go up for around 2%, but we're expecting it to be more in the 4 to 5% range, which is approximately $260,000 or just under a 2% tax rate increase. Some of the projects that are on the books for 2024 based on the 2023 budget that was approved last year were replacement of a couple plow trucks, replacement of a pumper, the Star Lake Road project and Stanley House Road projects continuing, and the Rossa Memorial Hall project, which is currently sitting on the books at approximately $683,000. But that number hasn't been specifically fleshed out. So those are some of the things we're looking at for next year.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions of Michelle? Councillor Collins.
Hi, Michelle. Didn't we get some kind of infrastructure grant for the Rosso Memorial Hall? That doesn't come in?
No, we did not. We did get a grant for the roof at the Humphrey Arena.
That's it, eh?
Yes.
I thought maybe, because I know it's 2024. And I thought for sure we got some kind of a grant or we didn't. Okay.
Not at this time.
So that's
no.
600 and how much?
683.
All right, thanks.
I do trust that staff is applying for every grant that crosses their desk in every category under the sun. So there may be dollars fall out of the sky, but you've got to be on top of where the applications go. Jason.
Just with respect to the grant applications, a lot of times, in most cases, having projects that are deemed shovel ready or council approved is more favorable for us to actually acquire those grant funds. So even if the project hasn't started, if it's been endorsed by council through the budget approval process, et cetera, such as the Rosso Hall being on our forecast, it gives us the tools to be able to be a little more successful with our grant applications rather than on a hope and a dream that maybe one day we might.
Thank you. So I think we've all got the budget schedule. The next time you will hear back from staff is, I believe, the first meeting in September. They get their pet projects to put forward too. So stay tuned. And I would suggest that perhaps you should reach out to Councillor Fellner for his priorities. Go ahead.
So, Your Worship, I certainly will reach out to Councillor Fellner. He did message me and send his regrets. He's had an unexpected event that he's addressing. So what I've heard from council is infrastructure as key priorities. And I can appreciate, and I wanted to take just a brief moment. I spend a bit of time with the Finance Committee, but I did want to take some time and thank them for their continued contributions. They're an amazing group to work with and very forward thinking and willing to put the time and the efforts in to try and make things the best they can be. Not hearing anything different from council, we'll listen. What I'm hearing is we will sort of take the lead from the Finance Committee on a target of that 3 to 4%. Didn't hear any negative feedback from anyone about the concept of a capital levy, which has been recommended and something that we deferred a year ago because of the situation with inflation a year ago. But I think we have the framework for the general direction here, and you can be assured the rest of the administration is listening, and we're off to work.
Thank you. And I know that what you do at the Finance Committee is getting more innovative revenue sources. I think the capital levy, it's long overdue. I sit on some of the caucuses with other mayors. Many of them are looking at them. just as because the infrastructure in Ontario and I guess Canada-wide has been let to deteriorate, and it doesn't appear like anybody but the municipalities are going to tackle it. Go ahead. If you.
We just encourage that special levy sits in a restricted fund and not in the general reserves of the.
Absolutely. It has to go to infrastructure. That 170 million is a daunting figure, and I don't want to leave it for our successors. Okay, thank you. We move on. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda for August 8th, 2023 meeting of council. Could I have a motion? Councillor Adams and seconded by Greg Getty. All in favor, receiving staff reports. Thank you. And Michelle, I believe you're back on with your financial update, which is comprehensive in our package and going in the right direction.
Yes, it's the July 27th month end financial update. It includes information on the capital program. As you'll see, we've either spent or committed approximately 5.2 million out of the $7.7 million capital budget. So things are well on their way. There's also some information in there on the reserves. And if council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. As always, it's very comprehensive. Does anybody have any questions for Michelle?
Yes.
Councillor Collins?
Yes, Michelle, reserve transfers, transfer to reserves operating. So there was capital $27,000 that was transferred to reserves from operating?
Are you looking at the reserves page?
I'm looking at, I wish I had a page number here.
Mm-hmm.
Page 97?
Oh, yes, page 97.
97.
Yes.
So every year we transfer a significant amount of money to our reserves, various different reserves. There is 2.2 that goes to our capital. There's 27,000 that gets transferred to reserves for operating issues. So we put money away every year for the election, and we put money away for the official plan review every 5 years. That's part of the 27,000.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Michelle.
Does that answer your question? Anybody else? Thank you, Michelle. I like seeing this every month and the number going up.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a motion that we have a bylaw number 2023-077, being a bylaw to amend Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-010-005-12116, application number R 2023-0007-H for Norse is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. And this follows up on our item number, where was it? 6, I believe. Yes. Could I have a motion? Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Finson. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that bylaw number 2023-080, being a bylaw, and enter into an agreement with John and Arlene Barr related to an agreement under section 45 bracket 9.2 of the Planning Act, file number ARG 2023-0002-F for Barr is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion, Councillor Collins, and a seconder, Councillor Getty? Lauren is here to answer any questions if you have. I think the report's pretty comprehensive. Does anybody have any questions for Lauren? All in favor? And that's carried. And this is the second part of the same thing. The motion that bylaw number 2023-086, being a bylaw to delegate authority to exercise council's authority for agreements pursuant to section 45 for minor variance of the Planning Act, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from somebody? Councillor Finson. And seconded by Councillor Bazinski. All in favor? Thank you. And this is I have to read this the whole thing. Okay. Bear with me. I have a motion. Whereas on October 17th, 2022, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin passed resolution number 2022-320, granting provisional approval to consent application numbers B 2022-0027-F and B 2022-0028-F and B 2022-0029-F and B 2022-0030-F for shipman, subject to the conditions set out in the decisions. And whereas the applicant has submitted changes to the application and a draft reference plan and has requested a change of conditions to ensure appropriate future access to the lands. And whereas section 53, bracket 23 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, see page 13, permits council to change the conditions of a provisional consent any time before a consent is granted. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby rescind resolution number 2022-320, which is to be replaced with the conditions included as Schedule A to this resolution, being the conditions of approval for consent application numbers B 2022-0027-F, B 2022-0028-F, B 2022-0029-F, and B 2022-0030-F for shipment. And further, that as per the authority granted under section 53, bracket 24 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, chapter P13, as amended, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin has determined that the changes to the conditions of consent applications number B 2022-0027-F, B 2022-0028-F, B 2022-0029-F, and B 2022-0030-F shipment as indicated are not minor and require further notice to be provided. Could I have a motion? Councillor Finson and seconded by Councillor. Sorry.
I have a question too.
Okay, just a sec,
Okay, yep.
Councillor Adams. Okay. Questions for Taylor on this one from Councillor Collins first.
Okay. Taylor. First off, I'd like to know, is there any other information on Cochrane Lake? Example, is there any other cottages or houses on that lake now? Or is that just, this is just getting developed as we speak? Or in the very near future? Cochrane Lake.
Through your worship, I'm just gonna, the lots shown on the page 155 of your agenda, so parts 3, 4, 5, and 6 do not exist yet. They are proposed to exist. There are, I'm just clicking on loading the GIS data. According to our GIS, there are 9 parcels, but only 1 permanent seasonal dwelling on the lake.
So,
As
yes,
built.
so there's only one, right?
Yeah.
That's, okay. I'm thinking we need more information on that lake. More of a lake description as we have on all our other lakes that are, where there are cottages and homes. Some type of, lake description, size, depth, spring fed, landlocked, information like that, I think should be gathered as well as you are gathering the other information. Just so we have some type of, on our map, on our GIS map, it doesn't say anything about Cochrane Lake. It just seems like a very small, very, very small body of water. And I just think we need a little bit, if we're going to develop around that lake, we need more information about the lake itself.
Through your worship, when this original application came in, that's when all the environmental studies and the boating impact study were submitted. So there was a further analysis also on water quality at that stage. What the report in front of council is doing tonight is on page 155, there's a little strip called Part 7. Essentially, that's just being created. At one point, they're hoping to provide right-of-way access to it, but in order to establish more formal access, they need to create a new strip there.
So can I just, so the part 7 on page 155 is just the right of way, looks like a little road going in from the right-hand side. That's all we're doing tonight?
Yeah, it's creating that parcel. So in the future, that can become a condominium driveway, not condominium in the sense of a multi-story building, but just condominium organized access. So it never becomes a municipal problem.
Okay, and the environmental and lake studies are available for Councillor Collins if he'd like to review them?
Yep, and if he likes, I could send those out to him if you want.
Okay.
It's just that I'd like a little bit more information than just that, like the size of the lake, like that.
I believe that was all in the environmental study.
The size of the lake, the depth of the lake and everything else, Taylor. That's what I'm looking for. Okay.
I'll see
All
what I
right,
can
thank
find.
you.
Okay, thank you. So, whoops, we're just addressing that one road right away today. So we have a motion on the table, moved by Gail Finson and seconded by Ken Adams. All in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. Thanks, Taylor. We move on to item 10, which is really just for information. Anybody that had Phonom on their calendar, they've moved the date by, I think, 10 days earlier. So just make note of that, change your calendars. And council reports, let's start with Ward 1, Ken.
Thank you. On July 19th, I attended the Recreation and Culture Committee meeting. On July the 20th, I attended the West Prairie Sound Museum meeting in Prairie Sound. July the 21st, I attended the opening of the refinished deck of the West Prairie Sound Museum. Graydon Smith was there to cut the ribbon. July the 29th, I attended the Horseshoe Lake Association meeting at Humphrey Arena. Well attended. July the 30th, I attended the Christie Bay Road Association meeting. The meeting was held outside at Kent Wolf's. August 5th, I attended the Rake and Lake Association meeting held at the Foley Hall. It was well attended as well. I met with 3 different constituents on the long weekend that I'm working with, and hopefully I can solve the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bazinski.
Thank you. And Councillor Adams was quite busy, but he and I also attended on the 22nd, a 2-hour time slot where constituents could come to talk with us in person. As well, on the 29th, I attended the Salmon Lake Annual General Meeting. And one of the issues there was the historic portage, and there's been further discussions which I've forwarded on to the Director of Public Works and Planning, and I believe they're looking into it. I've had a number of other constituent calls with respect to short-term rentals and roads. And thank you very much.
Councillor Getty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the 18th, I attended a Rosso Nursing Station meeting. On the 20th, I met with members of the Lake Joseph North Association. On the 20th as well, I had a CPAC meeting. They had been monitoring since the last CPAC meeting, the number of frauds, the increase in frauds from the business community. Those have decreased and settled back down again. The red flag that has come up now is we've had 100% increase in domestic violence incidents in the township. So we'll be watching that. One of the benefits is the Perry Sound Detachment has applied for funding through the government for a mental health social worker to be, it's a 1-year program to be where you will put a mental health worker and an officer in a car. Most of it is reactive follow-up on situations that have occurred, which would be a benefit to some of these situations that we may have going on in the township. They haven't got word yet if they're getting that funding yet or not. On the 29th, Horseshoe Lake AGM as well. On the 2nd of August, I had a meeting with the Broad River Road Association. And last Saturday, the Classic Cruise Car Show down at the Rosso Waterfront was a success. And just a reminder for anybody that's watching, this Saturday from 8 to 12 is the Friends of the Library Bake and Yard Sale, and please come out and support. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Collins.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Let me see, July 20th, I had a District of Perry Sound Municipal Association meeting about our fall meeting, which is supposed to be either September 22nd or September 29th. We will have a confirmation. Our agenda will be confirmed in our summer meeting, which is going to be Thursday, August the 17th. Okay, so we'll know who's going to be the speakers and so on and so forth, right? And we'll probably be bringing back impact again, and maybe we'll get some further information on when they'll be out assessing.
And Whitestone's the host, aren't
And
you?
Whitestone is the host, yes. So we don't have far to go. Let me see. July 25th, we had a special DSAB meeting. That was just a meeting. It was a quick meeting regarding an RFP that needed to be approved. And I did have, I got a letter and I attended a meeting with Jeff Rose at the Camp George, and further to that, I went and I visited with Nancy Riker and her husband Peter, and actually had a great time. They're very nice people and genuine, and so her and I will be working together to try and rectify some of the amplified noise coming from the camp. So that's ongoing as we speak. Okay.
Just a question. Have you been involving our fire chief, Sean? Because he's been on and off with you.
He's on vacation this week, but this was just, I just got the letter, I think on Saturday, I
Oh,
think.
just
And
make
so
sure
I just
Sean's in the
took
loop.
it into my, oh, no, yeah. I just took it on myself, because, there was a petition with about 40 names on it. And so I thought it was time for me to go over there and get to the bottom, just get to the bottom of it. And it was my third time that I had to be over at the camp. So that's not bad in 9 years. So it's just that they get a new crew in every year, counselors, and some of them just like to turn up the amplifiers a bit louder, right? And they don't realize that sound travels over water. So.
Yeah, just make sure Sean's in the loop.
Oh, absolutely.
Counselor Finson.
I had a Pumpkin Fest meeting, went very well. So Pumpkin Fest is on the go. Everything is looking good. I worked at the Classic Cruise for an hour as a greeter, and it was lovely. It was a beautiful day. The cars were amazing. I've had lots of calls regarding boats at the permanently, and bathrooms and kids jumping off the gazebos and stuff, all been handled. I've spoken to staff. Everything is good. A couple of trees problems, but everybody's on all of those things. And it was just a lot just lately. So I think it's been hot. People don't know what else to do with themselves. Yeah, other than all those phone calls, and I went to the special meeting also for the DSAB, very short meeting, but attended that as well. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have too much more to add. July 26th was the Municipal Services Board meeting to keep the pool on track, and there's some work happening there that I hope we'll hear at the next meeting. On the 27th, I attended the fundraising team meeting for the pool, and I would like to put a date on everybody's calendar. Sunday, August 27th. A woman named Kim McGee will be swimming the circumference of Little Otter Lake as a fundraiser for the pool. She came to us as someone who lives in assisted living. Says that the pool will help save her life. She can only exercise in the water and doesn't walk very well, but she would like to do a distance swim in aid for the pool. So we are working with it. We have a release from her doctor, and she will leave from and arrive back at Foley Matheson Beach. And we hope to have her arrive to a barbecue with supporters. So you will be seeing more. She'll have her dedicated website on the pool website. You'll be seeing more in the next couple of weeks. Valerie's working with her. It's quite an impactful human interest story.
What date?
Sunday, August 27th. Her name is Kim McGee, and it's being called Kim's Swim. Councillor Bazinski, you have a question related to that?
Yes, I do. Has anyone contacted the Otter Lake Ratepayers Association so they could maybe broadcast it and get some more support out?
Not yet. I spoke to Jeff and Deb this morning at the marina. And as soon as we have the official release, we will call all the lake associations. But I think Otter Lake ratepayers may be essential. We have kayaks accompanying her from Rosso Lake College. She was a student there for 1 year. And so staff with National Lifeguard certifications will be with her. But I'm hoping that Otter Lake Marine can provide us with a pontoon boat, because if Kim needs to be rescued, she needs to have a boat with a ladder. A kayak couldn't rescue her. And we have some female Ironman swimmers who will be swimming part of the distance with her. On the 29th, July 29th, I attended the Horseshoe Lake AGM with Greg and Ken, and I also attended the McKellar Sesquicentennial, which means the 150th celebration of the founding of McKellar. It was amazing. there were thousands of people there and many generations of people whose forebears had lived in McKellar long, long ago, like 100 years ago. If you're driving Highway 124, stop at their township offices and look at the horse that was commissioned and made for the sesquicentennial. It's made out of metal farm implements that have been donated over the years. It's really impressive. It's right by the highway in front of the where the council chambers are. I mean, it looks almost real. And I mean, I don't know all the parts, but for instance, the fur on the legs is made with chains. The eyeballs are made with tablespoons. It's really, really an interesting piece of sculpture. August 3rd, we had a meeting with Ministry of Municipal Affairs, and I will update you on that. August 5th was the Lake Joe North Association AGM, as well as the Rankin Lake AGM. At the Lake Joe North AGM, it was held at Gordon Bay. So I met the new owner of Gordon Bay and all of Maple Leaf Marinas. Dave Rozicki, he's already talking to our planning department for all kinds of changes at Gordon Bay, including a boat-in Starbucks. I also attended the Classic Car and Boat Show, which was really impressive. Lots of people, everybody seemed to be having a good time. And then on that night, Gordon Bay put on one heck of a fireworks display, which will become annual on the August long weekend. They had a professional barge out in Lake Joe. And just so people know, I and Gail and Greg and Terry will be off to AMO the week of the 20th of August. Jason too. So that's the report. What's next? Oh, council. Oh, sorry, you've got something to say? Sorry. It says council report, sorry.
Well, I like to take advantage of the time and just share with council and with the community a couple quick updates. Of course, council, you've covered a lot of great things, including the Classic Cruiser Car Show, but I did want to just report that both the township and the Seguin Public Library are both at vital stages in the process of drafting strategic plans. Library patrons, business owners, full-time residents, seasonal residents, everyone is encouraged to visit letsconnectseguin.ca to participate in a public survey that will help to define both organizations' mission, vision, values, and priorities. For those that are unable to join us on letsconnectseguin.ca, paper copies of the survey are also available at the municipal office and at all library branches. The consultation will remain open through August, so there's still a bit of time. We also wanted to take a moment just to thank members of the public for participating in recent consultation about proposals to our proposed changes to the open air burning bylaw. The bylaw department continues to work through their work plan and will also soon launch a similar consultation about clean yards. So just keep an eye on the township's website and social media for details. You spoke quite in depth, Your Worship, about Kim's Swim, and the township looks forward to continuing to support all things that are going to make that pool and recreation complex a wonderful asset for West Perry Sound. And speaking of wonderful assets, one of the busiest ones these days continues to be the Humphrey Community Center. Personally spend quite a bit of time there, and it's a hopping place. It's fantastic. Work continues with no disruption to programming on the roof, of course, which is expected to be completed in the next few weeks, assuming Mother Nature will cooperate and ease up on the rainforest to get that roof done. But the Humphrey Community Center is one hopping place for the last couple of months, and we look forward to that continuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, it was a hopping place for the Horseshoe Lake AGM with all the banging happening on the Saturday morning on the roof too. But the guys kind of cooperated during the meeting so we could speak. We have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and correspondence as presented on the agenda for the August 8th, 2023 meeting of council. Motion from Greg Getty and a seconder from Ken Adams. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 4:21 PM in order to address matters pertaining to personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal and local board employees related to our compensation review, labor relations and employee negotiations related to the compensation review, and again, a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality related to the compensation review and governance update. Could I have a motion? Councillor Getty and Ken Adams. So we'll take a couple minutes to move into close. Oh, all in favor? And then I believe all of staff are closed. Okay, so I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the township of Seguin does hereby rise from the closed session and declare the regular meeting reconvened at 6:30 PM. Could I have a motion? Councillor Finson, seconded by Mario Brzezinski. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the township of Seguin does hereby receive the Seguin Township Market Compensation Review as presented to council on August 8th, 2023 by LBCG Consulting. And that council does hereby authorize and direct staff to implement the recommendations of the Seguin Township Market Compensation Review as presented to council on August 8th, 2023 by LBCG Consulting. And that council does hereby authorize the 2023 costs for the implementation to be funded from the 2023 budget and salary grid movement reserve amount required from the reserve is not to exceed $75,902.98. Could I have a motion? Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Getty. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that bylaw number 2023-085, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of meetings of council, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a motion from Councillor Collins and seconded by Councillor Finson? All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the council of the corporation of the township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this regular meeting of council at 6:32 PM to meet again on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023, or at the call of the mayor. I've got Councillor Getty and Councillor Adams. All in favor? Thank you. And we are done.